Glad to have you back. If you have just joined us, you're watching Daybreak on the Rise News channel, and you're just in time to catch the paper review with our news analyst, Dr. Constance Ikoko. Good morning. It's the midweek edition. Great to have you.
It is Wednesday. Good morning at this one. Good morning. How are you guys today?
Morning.
Great.
All right. To look at the papers this morning, we have Emmanuel Azikian. He is a columnist with Vanguard newspaper. Thanks for joining us. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with This Day newspaper. In This Day, after monetary relief, inflation hits 32.70% amid higher food energy prices. Shell's $1.3 billion oil asset sale not in waiting room as FG rejects Renaissance bid. NUPRC says 200 billion naira disbursed to HEDTs, clarifies alleged delayed funding in Akwa Ibom. World Bank ending extreme poverty by 2030 no longer possible. CJN laments number of cases threatening sack of non-performing judges. The new Chief Justice of Nigeria, Kudirat Kekereekun, says these pending cases are due to poor performance by judges. She also says the National Judicial Council will not hesitate to show these judges the way out. I mean, you know, Adeswa.
Yes.
I think that if that's what needs to be done in order to get some movement, then she needs to do that.
Indeed. See, the CJN has joined the list of lamentation. We need to move from lamentation to revelation at this point. You recall that her predecessor, retired Justice Kayode Ariwola, on his valedictory service day, was also lamenting the long delay of cases. But it's good news that she's taken this up early in her tenure. We only hope to see actions. Let's move away from complaints and let's actually see action. If she says judges will be cautioned and heads will have to roll for this, Nigerians would like to see that, because there's no reason why you have cases. Indy was mentioning a particular case about a kingpin, a kidnap. Exactly. A kidnap kingpin who was arrested several years ago, and that case is still being prosecuted. That's not justice for the victims. They say the wheels of justice grinds slow, but I think it can be faster than the pace at which it's indeed.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the issue of if they do have issues that impede work, at the workplaces, then that should be tackled. If
you have to get more judges because the workload is too much for them, why don't we do that? What's the problem?
Right. Okay, let's look at the Guardian newspaper. Now, inflation wearing Nigerians begging, borrowing for survival. Your policies punishing Nigerians, professional bodies tell Tinubu. And then Power Minister denies multiple grid collapses, blames minor trip-offs. And then Nigeria others may need 100 years to end extreme poverty, says World Bank. This was contained in a report on low and medium income countries titled Poverty, Prosperity and Planet. Achieving the previous target of 2030, getting millions out of poverty is no longer feasible. I mean, China did it within 40 years. They lifted 800 million people out of poverty within 40 years. Certainly, it may not take 100 years. It depends on what you need to do and if you put in the work. Emmanuel.
I agree with you. It's not, this is a hypocritical report, at least I would say, from the Bretton Woods institutions, saying that Nigeria needs 100 years to end poverty. And Nigeria is implementing the same IMF policies that are prescribed by the Bretton Woods institutions. The fact that we're implementing the policies you have recommended and that it's not working, it shows that some things need to be done and which are not being done. The twin policies of devaluation and the free devaluation, that's the free float of the naira, and removal of oil subsidy is what has brought Nigeria to this position. Just a year or two ago, India overtook Nigeria as the world's poorest, as the country with the highest proportion of poor people. Now, with the devaluation of the naira now, Nigeria is returning to that position. So we need to recheck the policies. We need to rethink the implementation of policies recommended by the World Bank. They are not helping us. We should go back.
One of the things we've noticed in Nigeria, and especially a lot of developing countries, is that we seem to outsource our capacity to think, our capacity to imagine, and that has led to dependency. That needs to change.
Nigeria is so blessed. There are certain, you can break this down. He has mentioned one, the World Bank and the IMF and the rest of them. The second one is in-house. In The Richest Man in Babylon, he talks about expenses rising up to meet income. I'm trying to get the name of the theory, but I haven't got it. But we seem to consume much more than we produce. And we don't even encourage local production. Even our leaders go out to buy things. They travel, everything is done abroad. That's another angle. And then the fact of, are you deliberately, consciously trying to work at reducing poverty, which will entail service, a heart of service, and then you minus selfishness. These are the factors, because there's nothing you don't have in Nigeria, even the personnel. So it must be a deliberate, conscious effort on the part of leaders and the people as well, but mostly leaders, to tackle the question of poverty. Right. And like Emmanuel mentioned, the place of the lending nations like World Bank cannot be overemphasized across the globe. They cause so much havoc to nations. Argentina is one example.
Right. Okay, let's look at Daily Sun. FG reconstitutes committee to renegotiate Varsity Pact as to other unions hopeful. Uproar in Senate over push to test politicians for drugs. Senator Kawu Somaila says some politicians are fueling drug abuse and using their homes as narcotics storage. Kawu said politicians not only procure drugs for young people, but encourage them to use those drugs as well. Emmanuel, what's your take on the story?
Well, my take is that when I had Senator Kawu yesterday say that he can take NDLEA, that he knows the political actors who take drugs. So to me, I think that is the starting point. Let him take the NDLEA to those who are these drug, the politicians who do take drugs. You remember just about a few weeks ago, the NDLEA did say that they did a report that about 20 candidates that were to partake in the local government elections in Kano failed the drug test. And you do know, it is very apparent, when some of the actions of our political actors, they are influenced by drugs. And mark you, what causes this is the stress they go through. A number of them have to stay through the night because, and they need to be mobilized, they need to be energized with these drugs. So one will have to bring caution to political actors to rethink their approach to life.
Right. Taking drugs to get energized, it sounds quite odd, but Adesuwa, I think the bigger question is mental text actually, because some of the actions of politicians in general, not all of them, you have to wonder whether some of them are mentally stable. Perhaps
we are one step closer to finding out why we are the way we are and why the people who govern us behave the way they behave. As you know, drug interaction affects mental capacity and mental health. You recall that in 2022, the boss of the NDLEA, the anti-drugs agency in Nigeria, Brigadier General Buba Marwa, retired, did mention and did suggest that political parties should put as a criteria screening for candidates. That's drug tests for candidates who want to participate in any elections. At that time, it was the 2023 presidential election. And it was backed by the Nigerian Medical Association, as well as the NBA, who told NDLEA at that time to go to the National Assembly to even back it up with a law to ensure that before you vie for office, after picking up the tickets and the forms of your party to run for office, you should also subject yourself to be tested for drugs. Students are being tested in some schools for drugs, so I don't see why politicians should not be subjected to drug testing.
And even state of general health.
Indeed.
We have that problem.
What Kawo said here is very instructive and poignant. He pointed to security operatives, he pointed to the offices of politicians and their homes where drugs, and he's asking the presidents, if we're serious, let's get down and do something about this. This is something that should be, because he said, he was using the second person singular. He said, he was talking about all of us, So it was not like he excluded himself. So the uproar, you'd wonder, if you're innocent, why are you shouting?
You have nothing to hide.
Okay. Vanguard newspaper, I don't know if we have Vanguard, but a good story. Super Eagles Libyan horror show highest authority ordered diversion of flight. According to the pilot, this is a Tunisian pilot that was flying the chartered flight that took the Super Eagles to Libya for the CAF competition. And he was saying, look, I tried mid-air, or when he was descending, he was asked to divert. He said he tried to convince them that he was short of aviation fuel, but they forced him to land and in another airport, in an alternative airport, and luckily they averted that crisis. Emmanuel.
The revelation from the Tunisian pilot, it's something that should energize the Nigerian authorities to bring appropriate sanctions against the Libyans, because this was probably, they wanted them to commit suicide. The pilot was descending. Now you are now asking him with limited fuel. You remember because of the capacity of this aircraft, they had to keep on refueling. I think they refueled in Kano. So you are now asking them to go another 300 kilometers. And one thing we should be grateful to God for is that this pilot, being a Tunisian, I understand he was familiar with the terrain of this the airport where the aircraft was diverted to. Because otherwise, if it was a Nigerian or probably another pilot who was not familiar with that airport, something untoward could have happened, especially as this happened in the night. This was an airport that is rarely used. I think it's mostly used for Hajj purposes. So it seems as if the Libyans deliberately wanted something to happen to Nigeria. I think they should be punished for this. The international community, FIFA and CAF, should be called in.
I mean, it was a dangerous move and quite mean. They did make reference to, the problems they had in Nigeria when they came here for the competition, logistics problem, but that was not intentional, and whatever it was immediately rectified.
It was caused by them.
Right.
It was caused by them. They were told where to land. In fact, they tried to make everything difficult for the Nigerian NFF. But the point is, with what the pilot has said, CAF, there's nothing really to investigate. So because these people could have died and we're still talking. Okay.
Let's look at the international headlines for you. Daily Graphic, President bids Savannah region goodbye. He was visiting and is pictured with one of the chiefs there. Daily Graphic, he's probably saying goodbye because his tenure is coming to a close. Elections will hold in December in Ghana. Daily Graphic, do we have that there? If not, let's move on to Citizen South Africa. There was no school racism.
That's Daily Graphic.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's move on to Citizen South Africa. There was no school racism. 12 girls who were suspended on account of racism in a school from Gauteng have been found not guilty. This is according to a report by Thabo Mbeki Foundation. Mbeki is the former president of South Africa. Well, at least those poor girls were exonerated. Then Daily Mail this morning. Right to die could become duty to die, Justin Welby. Welby is the Archbishop of Canterbury. He's warning against legalizing assisted suicide because he says this could lead people to opt for an assisted death to avoid feeling as if they have a burden or they are burdening their loved ones. Emmanuel, quickly on this.
The Archbishop of Canterbury is a clergy and is as a Christian gentleman. I think it is his duty to promote life, either here on earth and thereafter. So what is against a bill that is coming up in the UK Parliament, I think today, that is going to make assisted suicide more easy. So he's asking that, yes, that the promoting this bill will make it easy. You know, people are burdened, especially the aged, who think that they are a burden to those they depend on, that it will make it easier for them to die. I think he's now calling for caution against this bill, that this bill should not be passed, and is asking constituents across the country to speak to their legislators not to pass this bill. I think he's right on point. It is his duty as a clergyman to promote life and not death.
We'll see whether that bill passes. Financial Times this morning, Boeing seeks $35 billion to bolster balance sheet with strike, as strike paralyzes its factories. It agrees to $10 billion credit facilities. I mean, Boeing has been going through a lot of crises recently, you know, facing crippling strikes and many other woes. The other day, it announced that it was laying off staff, you know, in order to stay in business. This is a bit scary, Ndi, because it's an airline.
It's an airline. I don't know why Boeing, which is one of the renowned airlines across the globe or the world, is having these challenges. There's a disconnect somewhere. The question people are asking is, have they done enough to prevent, of course, the incidents?
There were those problems with their aircrafts, yes.
People so died.
That has affected them negatively, yes.
It's been a negative, it had a
their shares tumbled and the rest of that. This one, do you want to add something before we go?
Well, maybe not on Boeing. Just wanted to add the Ghanaian story about the president making a goodbye tour. So he was in Savannah region. And I'm just wondering, I mean, you've been in power and now you're saying goodbye to the people and you can take a tour. Does it reek of confidence, or is this a political strategy? I'm just imagining Nigerian politicians having served their constituents and having the audacity to go back home. Some of them don't even go to their constituents while they're still in power. I mean, imagining, can we see a time where Nigerian politicians can actually go back to their constituents who voted for them to say, thank you, I have served my time?
Some of them can, not all of them.
Way back, Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, when the people were striking, it's called Mwalimu the teacher. He boldly told his whatever, leave me, I want to talk to my people. And he went and faced them.
Because they view themselves with so much security and power.
Nigerian politicians can brave that? Think about it, politicians.
I thought it was an interesting story to see this morning. But that's all we have time for. Dr. Constance Ikoko, thank you so much. And we also thank you, our guest commentator for the day, Mr. Chris. Mr. Emmanuel Azike. Thank you so much for being here. And that's all we can take on Daybreak today. Up next is the morning show. And goodbye from me, Adesoa Omorwan.
And like every moment here does indeed matter. I am Ndi Amogu, thanking you for watching. Bye.